afternoon. My name is Jennifer Price, and I am your speaker for this afternoon, Unapologetically Authentic. I want to just start by thanking everyone for joining us this year for the 11th Annual Denver Startup Week. This is actually my first time to Denver. I'm not originally from here. It's a beautiful city, and apparently I picked a great week weather-wise. So I want to thank our title sponsors, Amazon, Capital One Cafe, Dell for Startups, and then the Downtown Denver Partnership. The session is a part of the Spotlight track, which is sponsored by Southwest as well as Chase, one of the 8 programming tracks aimed at supporting the entire entrepreneurial team. So by attending this session, you're agreeing to the code of conduct as well as being photographed or recorded on video. And of course, we ask that you share the hashtag Den Startup Week and BR Latinas Resilience. So thank you for being here. I will get started with Unapologetically Authentic. Just knowing how to execute on your vision. And I apologize if I have to drink occasionally. Maybe I'll just hold it so it can be easier. No, that's all right. If I have to drink occasionally, some water, just my throat's getting a little scratchy. So we're just going to be talking about executing on your vision in an authentic manner that's making sure you're staying true to yourself and the vision for your company as well. So I'll start by giving you a brief background of who I am, but more of my background in general with more detail will come out throughout the presentation. But I am an attorney by background. I'm a special education attorney. I focus on disability rights, primarily on special education law. I also do some adult disability work, but a bigger part of my practice has been special education law. I am also the founder of the Disability Media Network, which is a streaming app that offers content featuring or produced by people with disabilities. It's an easy way to say it. It's just sort of the Netflix or BET or Telemundo for disabled content creators. I am also the author of a book that I wrote, which was for parents who needed help with their kids having issues with the school districts and needed to just sort of understand the laws in a more digestible way so that they can determine whether their case is a viable case. I have done a podcast before called Price to Change, where I interviewed social entrepreneurs. And then I've been a legal analyst on a local TV show in Pittsburgh, which is where I come from. So what does being unapologetically authentic mean? While using the example of my network, we really stay true to that mission of being authentic to our content creators, authentic to our audience, and which keeps us aligned with the mission. So the whole point of it was to offer a media outlet for people with disabilities to be able to more accurately see themselves on television. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that we're curating content that is giving stories that are more reflective of what's happening in the community. So we have, the movie Anxiety of Laughing on there, which is a movie that was created by a screenwriter with cerebral palsy. If you watch the movie, you'll see that his way of speaking is different than the way I sound. He has a slower speech pattern as a result of his disability. But it's not a movie that we would say, no, you don't sound like us, look like us. I want something more acceptable, so we're not going to take the movie. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to stay core to our mission as a business. And we know that there are other people out there who quite look and sound just like him, who would love to see another movie or any other sort of content with actors who look and sound like them as well. Who are we? Is the same way. There's someone on there who loves to go hiking. He does not walk. He uses a wheelchair, but he always went to go hiking with his friends. So his friends put him on their backpack, in a special backpack that carries adults, and he's gone hiking literally across the world. He has created a whole following behind people who appreciate him, who has created a podcast because there are people in their same shoes. Shaky hands is just a cooking show. The person has cerebral palsy and he has shaky hands, but you know what? He likes to cook. So he's telling you or giving you recipes and showing you how to cook chili and blackened salmon just like anyone else, but he just happens to have a disability. And then the last ones are wallflower and interviewer who are people with Down syndrome. So it's really about knowing who we are, which is a media outlet that is really particularly focused on people with disabilities, and not swaying from that and just being unapologetic about it. Because it's not about whether someone else is giving the thumbs up and approving it, so much so as who is our audience, and what does our audience want to see? So we always take it back to the audience. So why is this important? Well, first off, it's certainly going to validate you as a CEO and as a founder. If you can figure out your core values and your core mission for your business and execute on that and stay focused in on that, then you'll be aligned with the purpose of what it is that you're doing. You know, I got into this not because I had been interested in media, but during COVID, this business was born out of COVID, and I remember listening to a bunch of podcasts and watching YouTube video interviews and listening to a lot of audiobooks, and one interview that I came across was one by Oprah, where someone interviewed Oprah, and she was just given the story of how she even started the TV show and how she knew after the first episode that is what she wanted to do. And so she made it her business to be intentional about her purpose and making sure that this is what she was going to continue to do and make her career, having her own show. And immediately when I heard that, I thought, I've been in that similar position. I can distinctly remember walking away from a podcast interview thinking, yeah, I got to figure out how to make this media thing work and monetize it, because this is where I want to be. I knew I did not want to be or retire at least from being an attorney, and I wanted to go into media, but it was just sort of that click of listening to the interview that I thought, yeah, I've actually been in that same position. And same thing with Damon John. I was listening to an audiobook where he would, mention we all have the same 24 hours. How are you using yours? And if whatever it is that you're doing, can you answer the question about whether it brings you joy? Could you see yourself doing it and doing it for an extensive period of time? And in that moment, as I'm standing in my kitchen cleaning it, listening to this audiobook, I knew that the answer to that question was no. Practicing law was no longer bringing me the same level of joy that it was bringing me in the very beginning. So it's really, as a CEO and founder, you're really trying to pay attention to whatever outside clues may be there about whether it's a podcast interview or an audiobook, as well as just sort of following your own intuition and feelings and gut when something is telling you that this is not where you need to be, this is not staying true to who you are. It's also going to validate your audience. Right, if your audience sees that you're being authentic to yourself and your core values and the mission of your company, they're going to find you. They're going to appreciate what you're doing, they're going to see what you're doing, and they're going to want to follow you and share with their audience of people as well. And then lastly, it's certainly going to encourage others to change. I mean, one of the aspects that I thought when it came to this business was, well, not only am I offering an outlet for disabled filmmakers who create films and do the film festival circuit and many times don't have a distribution channel after that, but for people and as well as the viewers who may not be able to see people who look like them on TV. But, if there is a company out there that's not really thinking about people with disabilities in their products or services, then maybe they'll see what we're doing and, quite frankly, see other companies who are making people with disabilities a part of their business, and they will decide to change. So when they're making products or services, people with disabilities will be top of mind. Accessibility will be top of mind. When they're coming out with a commercial, maybe they'll put an actor with a disability to promote that product or service that they have. So it can also encourage change in others as well. So I just have two examples of validation from the audience. They were just two comments that were made on our YouTube channel. One, Kisses from Afar. This was after, there was an interview that I did in the very, very beginning of a black woman who had autism. She was late diagnosed, so she went her whole childhood not realizing she had autism until her early 20s. And so the interview was just about what it was like growing up, not realizing she had autism in a family that didn't understand who she was and couldn't relate to her. So Kisses from Afar said, great interview, I was self-diagnosed at 25. Been searching high and low to find a woman of color speaking on this subject. Where would I purchase the book? And Mars W06 said, lovely interview, so much I can relate to. I'm Jamaican and first-generation American, and it was great to hear about your perspective. I'm 27, revisiting my self-diagnosis, and I really had to dig to find this video. We have a long way to go with awareness around black women and men, adults with autism spectrum disorder. So this is just an example of how your audience is going to be validated and what it is that you do. If they see that you're being authentic to yourself, you're being authentic to the business, and you are not apologizing for what it is that you're doing and who you're doing it for, they're going to find you and they're going to certainly appreciate you for that. So how do we get there? Well, it's really about identifying your strengths and weaknesses as a founder, and leaning into them, not moving away from them. So if we are looking at strengths, I have a couple of examples being new to the industry. And I certainly put that up there because I personally am new to the industry. I'm a lawyer by background, and the only reference of media I had was, watching Netflix personally and maybe going on TV sometimes to be a legal analyst. But the idea of creating a whole streaming app was a whole new concept for me that I had to lean into, whether it was the learning curve that I just had to embrace and read and read and read more than I probably wanted to read, or whatever that was. Part of the strength of being new to an industry is the fact that you're ignorant. And it's not ignorant in a bad thing so much as ignorant in a good thing, in that you don't know what you don't know. So you're not going to be scared to go full steam ahead. And you could be starting something, you could be reinventing the wheel, or you could be doing it differently than the traditional method. That could be a better, more efficient way. But you're certainly not going to be stifled by conventional wisdom, which is why I have the quote, convention is the enemy of progress. You don't have the conventional wisdom because you have no idea what you're getting into, how hard it's going to be, whatever the case may be, but you're excited, you know what you want to do, you know what your mission is, and all you want to do is just execute on that. So certainly being new to an industry shouldn't necessarily be an overwhelming thought or one to run away from or be shy about, because there are certainly some advantages to being new to an industry. Are you a one or two person team or just a small team? There are certainly some downsides to that. I mean, I think many of us know there are some downsides. But quite frankly, one of the positive or the strength of being a small team is that you can be a little bit more efficient because you can execute on ideas a lot faster. You're not running through a constant chain of commands. So if you think of something that you want to do, you get it done. You don't have to, go through a whole circus of people and get their ideas and opinions. It can just get done. So then you can execute on something a lot faster. So maybe you can hit the market faster, build your brand a lot faster than other people who have these big conglomerates where they have to go and talk to a whole bunch of people. And just by way of example, in my industry, if there's a CEO who wants a new piece of content, he's got to go, and this is a very broad way. There are certainly more channels, but he's going to go to the acquisition manager and say, hey, I want 10,000 hours of content, who then will go to the content manager and say, okay, we need 10,000 hours of content. What kind of content? Is it, reality or movies, documentaries? What kind of content? So then you go to the distribution aggregators, who are the big companies that have hundreds of thousands of hours of content, and figure out what content to get, negotiate a deal, to then go down and get the content. So now that you have the content, you've got to market the content, right? So when HBO Max sends me my email saying, hey, Succession is going to come out with a new series, that's gone through a whole series of other avenues beforehand. And then the chief marketing officer needs to go to those marketing assistants and social media team and figure out what's going to be the whole content strategy behind this. This can realistically take a 60 to 90-day process just because of the number of chain of commands you have to go through, and especially when you're talking about negotiating contracts for how much you're going to pay for things. And then you have to figure out what the marketing strategy is going to be. If you're a small team, you want content, you go and you email or call the aggregator and say, hey, I want this content. Or they may even reach out to you. I have one company that will reach out to me occasionally and say, I have some content that I think your network would be interested in. I can go to filmmakers. I go to filmmakers all the time that I find through Google searches or people recommend to me, and I reach out to them directly and say, hey, I want this content. And if I'm introducing myself for the first time, it's setting up a Zoom meeting within a week, and we get the contract out, and then the film gets delivered, the next day, which is like a 2-week process. Or I could go to alternative methods for the content. But the point is that when you're a small company, you can be more efficient and you can execute on your vision and your mission a lot faster. So it can certainly be a strength. It can obviously be a weakness as well, but you should still lean into the fact of the benefits of just being a small team, whether it's a 1-person team, a 2-person team, 5-person team, whatever it is. There are certainly a lot of benefits to being able to execute a lot faster on what you're doing. So some of the ultimate bigger benefits are that you begin to control your growth, which is a good thing because you're learning as you're growing, and you can control the growth so that it doesn't become too much too soon. And you definitely want to have some control over your growth because you don't want to be subsumed by the bigness of it, and then you can't really handle all of it. So you can control your growth a lot more. You begin to learn about yourself as a CEO, as a founder. What is your work style? What's your management style? How is it that you operate in the business that you have? You learn about your product or service a lot better. What are the pros? What are the cons? How can you make it better? How can you, from my experience, how can I make my user experience a lot better? Which is a very big top of mind thing that I'm always thinking about. You are building your customer base regularly. You are learning about your target audience because you are the chief marketing officer. So when you come up with that social media strategy and someone shares it or someone likes it or comments and the notification comes to your cell phone or comes up, it's going to your cell phone. So you can learn your audience a lot better, which then helps you create or learn your target audience a lot better. You're that much connected to everything that is that you're doing, which then ultimately builds your competency in whatever industry that you're in, which then helps you build your confidence. So once you decide, okay, I'm going to raise money, now you're in a much better position to be able to talk about your business, your audience, and all of that to be able to raise funds. So some of the weaknesses, you're a team of 1 or 2, right? So there are benefits to being a team of 1 or 2, but the biggest weakness to being a team of 1 or 2 is just the fact that you can get overwhelmed by all of everything that you're having to do, or just a small team, overwhelmed by everything that you have to do. You're the CEO, maybe the CTO, CMO, you are every chief title that could be had, you could be holding all of those positions. And it can be an overwhelming process. So if it becomes that overwhelming, instead of trying to figure out how to, get some money or raise money to hire more people, it could just be a matter of getting some interns and delegating it out to some interns to help out so that it takes some of the lift off of you. I have money up here as a weakness, but I have an asterisk beside that as well, because of course we certainly need money to start the business, and depending on what it is that you're doing, you could need money to continue to run the business. But Money can also be a weakness in the sense that it will keep you from being able to really think creatively, which could be an outside-the-box method of how to, for instance, market your business. You know, if you're just starting out, you're never going to have as much money as the big players, whoever your competition is. Like I don't have as much as Netflix. I cannot worry about that. So, but I do have to think about how am I going to market what I'm doing in a different way. So my audience, for instance, they're certainly on social media, but I also know that they're supported by a whole swath of nonprofit organizations. So I need to be focusing on making connections with the nonprofit organizations and get them to also be my marketing engines for what it is that I'm doing, because I don't have $50,000 to spend on Google ads or Facebook ads or whatever the case may be. So, you know, money certainly obviously can help, but there is a weakness to it, just in the fact that you're not going to be forced to have to sort of grind and think outside the box, which could be your sort of way to explosion. So I will give you my story. So my story of how I even came about the Disability Media Network is that like I stated earlier, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I have been in the space of being a disability ally for years, just by my work of being a disability rights attorney. So I went to an event, a town hall event, where all the disability community invited all of the members of the media, TV, newspaper, magazine, whoever it was, to an event to just talk about their storylines, how they are representing people with disabilities, in their stories, what they're getting right, what they're getting wrong, ways they can improve. Nobody came to this town hall meeting, other than like a small neighborhood newspaper and then a nonprofit newspaper that was already getting it right. They weren't even really the target audience, but they came to show support. So from there, that was in like late 2019. Fast forward into 2020, and I began to think about what I want to do and moving forward, because I knew I didn't want to retire from practicing law. And I thought this event just stayed with me for a while, and that's when I decided I'm going to be the change that I want to see, right? I keep hearing about this. It's a problem. So why don't I create the solution for this? I knew it was lacking in the market, so I leaned into it and just went full force ahead to create this change. So it's really, I now ask, what is your story, right? What is your story in the sense of what is your story and what is keeping you authentic to the mission? You know, because at the end of the day, this is really about figuring out what it is that you're doing company-wise, why are you doing what it is that you're doing, for whom are you doing or creating the company or product? And are you staying authentic to all of those questions? Because you're going to have so many naysayers, you're going to have people with a lot of opinions, unsolicited opinions, and they're going to, at some point or another, make you, because it's going to come across very well articulated, so you may then begin to question, oh, maybe I'm not doing it right, or maybe I should do it differently, or maybe I don't really know what I'm doing. And granted, some people's opinions might actually be helpful or relevant. I would go so far as to say that probably half, if not most, will not, because you'll certainly get some unsolicited opinions from people who don't even know your industry, or don't really understand what it is that you're doing. So at some point, you're going to have to stay centered. And what I have found as being helpful in staying centered and executing on the vision of creating this streaming app is being authentic and remembering what it is that I'm creating, why I'm creating the platform, who I'm creating it for, and how is it going to benefit them. So I think that really is what it boils down to. It's making sure to stay centered And when you're staying authentic to all of that, then you can find a place of center at any points in time along the journey of being a founder. So I ask, does anybody have any questions or comments? Yes.
Do you have I'm curious about that. Do you have a personal process of how you consider yourself in these situations?
Center my situations of like people asking me questions or giving me unsolicited advice. Is that what you mean? I'd like to stay centered by, frankly, I do meditate. I find Headspace to be the app Headspace to be very effective for me. I thought that it was just sort of overrated, and then I tried it, and I was like, no, this is actually effective and making me, remember why I'm doing this. So I have found Headspace, or just a meditation app, to be very effective for me, and I do it on a daily. I start out my day in the morning that way. That way it really helps me, and then I go through like my calendar of what it is, my plan is for the day, and that helps me to stay centered, for sure. Yeah.
I'm sorry for coming in late, first of all.
That's good.
You just asked these 4 questions, and I'm curious if you could answer them for us.
Which 4 questions?
What you've created, you created the network.
Yeah.
Why did you create it?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you creating it for?
Yeah.
And how will they benefit from it?
Yep. So I created the streaming gap, the Disability Media Network streaming gap. I created it, ultimately I created it for people with disabilities. I wanted them to be able to see themselves on TV and media in a more authentic manner, because there was a point in time when people were, it's trying to change now, but certainly people were, or the networks were hiring non-disabled characters to play disabled roles. And then also one significant difference between my network and another network is that you're not going to see like Steven Spielberg's film on there. You're going to see the filmmakers themselves have a disability, which means the storytelling and the storylines are going to be a lot different and told through a disabled person's lens, which will come across more authentically to my audience or people with disabilities.
Well, you also mentioned authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
How do you verify your authenticity to be the person in this business?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because I don't identify as a person with a disability, and I make that up front to my filmmakers, my viewers, all of that. I am an ally to the community. I have found pushback a little bit in the beginning, but it was from maybe like a handful of people. By and far, thank you for coming. By and far, I have not received any pushback as not identifying as someone with a disability, because I am an ally to the community. And the last part, how does that make me authentic to creating the media?
You mentioned authenticity, and I found that that's very important.
Yes.
In terms of telling your story.
Yes.
And why you've created the business you've created. And I was curious as to how you identify as authentic in terms of, creating your business.
Yeah, I find myself authentic just because when I'm going to get whatever content it is, I go directly to my audience. And so I'm not creating any content that's being told through my lens. So all the content is being told through their lens. So I feel like the network is authentic in the sense of the customer base that I have, because some of the customer base are also the filmmakers or the actors themselves. Did that answer your question? Okay. Yes. So, are you asking about the challenge of finding the content itself? Yeah. So to find the content, my first stop was to go to film festivals. I know in Pittsburgh we have a film festival called the Real Abilities Film Festival, which is a film festival that specifically focuses on films only by and for the disabled community. But from there, I then just realized that there are similar film festivals all over, whether it's a deaf film festival or whatever the case may be. So I started at film festivals, and then I have also, at this point, received referrals from other filmmakers. But I do agree it is a challenge, but I'm finding that part of the challenge is because there is no distribution. And so it's not that the films aren't being created, but there's no distribution for them, so it's a lot harder to find them. So it is easier to go to film, at least start with the film festivals. And then once I can have a conversation with filmmakers, then they're a lot freer with information for other people because they're, tuned into the network. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes. I did not do it myself, no. For the app part of it, I went to a company. There are different companies out there that will create the app for you. And so I went to one company to make the app, and then when it came to the website, I hired a website developer. Yeah. 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 Yep. Say the last part. Yeah. So it doesn't ruin my business, but it does certainly make it a lot harder. But I will say I'm on LinkedIn, and I follow Netflix on LinkedIn. And one day they posted something like a meme of a billboard that said, don't be discouraged by your dreams. We started out with DVDs. And I printed that out, and I framed it, and I literally have it on the wall in front of my desk because I have to remind myself that, sometimes that Netflix 20 years ago or whenever they came out was not the Netflix that we see today. I used to have a subscription, and I hated it and got rid of it because I thought it was the worst, and now I love Netflix. But I can't get into the habit of comparing my business to a Netflix because it's just an unrealistic comparison. So I have to look at what it is that I have. And when it comes to financing, I will say that I am currently about to go through the seed funding method, in the next couple of weeks or so. I just started this business 2 years ago. So up until the 2-year period, I've just used the finances that I've had. And I've bootstrapped it along the way. I did get a small business loan, but it was a small business loan. It was not, $100,000, $200,000. But you just have to find ways. I negotiate quite a bit when it comes to the films, and which is another reason why I say money can be a strength or a weakness. And if you see that you don't have the money, then you got to figure out a different way. And I have learned to be a better negotiator with some of the filmmakers because I don't, there was one filmmaker whose film was on Netflix for 5 years, I believe it was, and Netflix paid him $250,000 to have it exclusively on their network. I don't have $250,000 to spend on one film especially. So, you just have to figure out how you can not make money the ultimate reason why you don't move forward. And if that means you have to develop better skills like negotiating the way that I did, or thinking of another way to make it a benefit for whoever it is that, whatever it is that you're doing, then that's what you'll have to do. It's definitely a grind. I don't want to make it look like it's not a grind. We're founders, we know it's a grind, and it's definitely a grind. Yes. All right.
And it's such a touching case. So I thought she needs a lot of voice into what she's doing, the voluntary work she's doing.
Okay.
And in terms of content relating to how to find content, I thought, have you had an experience where you would partner you would find a partner like that where you would relate, you have a story and someone needs actually more attention to have fundraising.
Yes.
So you would have your content and this person would have more fundraising attention.
I think I understand your question, and and I'll say yes, because I did come across, for instance, someone down in Florida who has cerebral palsy who's a life coach. And so she wanted to, and still does want to, create a whole series on TV about the life coach using some clients that she has, because she feels like what she's doing is not only going to help her clients, but then help the community at large. So yes, we are currently in the process of talking about that and ways to get financing for her program. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, I was just curious with your experience, whether you had that happening.
Yeah.
But if you would be interested to connect with this dentist,
Sure.
I'll reach out to you afterwards.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, because and I will say that because this is such a new thing that I'm doing in a new category in the industry, there are quite a bit of people, content creators, who want to do that. I've come across a woman who does home renovations, and so she wants to put together, like at Home Depot, to finance and sponsor a show about how to make home renovations more accessible. So especially in this area, because it's so new, I certainly find people who want to do that, for sure. Yes.
So as a creative entrepreneur, how do you prioritize your relationships within, like, you're saying finance is something you're trying to focus on? So I guess my question would be, do you focus more on your filmmakers, on your investors? What is your partners, and what's your kind of priority?
So right now, I focus on the filmmakers and the customers, because I have to build brand awareness. And building the brand awareness has really just been top of mind, because I'm in an industry. Well, I'll say my app is free to download, so it's not a subscription-based model. And for that reason, customer base and viewers and all of that become even that much more important when it comes to seeking out advertisers, because they're going to want to know how many people are actually watching for me to spend money on an advertisement. So for me, I really do have to focus on the filmmakers for the content, but then also the customer base for the views, and trying to get them and leverage that relationship with them to help me with the marketing as well, to build up the customer base. And now that I'm a lot more comfortable in the space and know what it is that I'm doing and how I'm getting it done, now I can focus on the financing piece of it. Because the reality is, to scale, there has to be like a serious investment. But certainly in the very beginning, I had to grow the base. Yeah.
So did you do that, like, by yourself, like, basically, like, on foot, going to these film festivals, or, like you said,
Yeah.
interns? Is that
I did. Well, but I didn't attend the film festival. So what I did was I looked to see where the film festivals were. And anytime there's a film festival, if you go to the website, they tell you the list of films that are out. And so I didn't have to go to the film festival. I mean, I did go to the one in Pittsburgh, of course, but I didn't have to go to like the Deaf Film Festival out in Seattle, because I knew the films that were being offered just based on the website. So then from there, I looked up who the director was, and a lot of times the director was also the point of contact for when it came to distribution. So I would just I have become a lot more fluent in Google research, let's just say that. I relied heavily on Google for like contact information, and then just reached out to them and introduced myself through an email, who I was, what it is that I'm doing. And I definitely more times than not received, I mean, I always received a positive response, but more times than not, they all responded. Yeah. And yes, interns, I do recommend interns because when you're in the beginning, you just can't afford to hire the help that you would need. But there are some great interns out there that need resume builders and can do the work. I mean, I currently have, for instance, one intern now who's at DePaul University for marketing research, and he loves everything about data and marketing research and all of that. So I'm like, great, let's get the Google Analytics data together because you're going to help me with get everything together for fundraising. Yeah. Are there any more questions? Well, I thank you for your time and for walking down here. I didn't know where Commons on Champa was. This is a nice space. It's a beautiful day. So thank you for your time and for showing up today and listening to me talk today.